record. Okay, so last time Puna Maitreya to ask the Buddha, how could the four elements, right? The earth, the water, the fire, and the wind came from the mind, right? And the Buddha say that you need to recognize us, and he say that even he attained the fruit of our hardship, but he could not understand what's mean. Uh, okay, so Punam Maitreya Putra and the assembly kept silent, awaiting with reverence the Buddha's Dhamma voice. The Buddha asked, Punamajayaniputta, you now ask why that which is abundantly pure and clean, suddenly great mountain, rivers, and the red earth. But have you not heard the Buddha declare that the self-nature Buddhi is absolute, enlightened, and that basic Buddhi is enlightened and absolute? Punamaja Yaniputra replied, yes, were the ones I have heard that. So this is similar as Huinang, right? When he listened to the Dhamma, the Diamond Sutra that decided by the lay person. You remember that part? He said that
Mm-hmm.
he decided that don't rely upon the sound, the sight, the smell, and so forth to uh, trigger your mind. Uh, just abide on nothing to but abide to trigger your mind. That's what is about the seven nature here. That's and also after he listened to fifth page of Dhamma Sutra lecture, and he say, okay, well, everyone has the pure nature already. There's no need to seek outside the mind. That's what the Buddha mentioned again, right? That's quite different from the Theravada tradition. It said that you need to do meditation to calm your mind. You need to do meditation to purify your mind. So that's big difference, huh? Mm. And in
Mm-hmm.
Zen tradition, they say, well, you need to recognize your pure mind as a Buddha. That's all. That's all you need. But of course, for the wise one, they could recognize, but not for the common people. That's why nowadays people refer to follow Theravada Vipassana tradition because it's the graduate practice and process of training the mind. It's not easy for common people to recognize, oh, your mind is Buddha mind. You have the pure nature already. It's pretty tough to recognize that, right?
Yeah, from the beginning, I think it is because it's, there's a whole big picture that needs to be painted generally for people to understand. Even the idea of like what is Buddha nature, like what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah.
It's so vague. That's why uh mm, during the 60th or during the 20th century, the Zen tradition is pretty popular, but now it's not. The Vipassana tradition more popular because they follow the graduate process uh, of mind transformation. Because people they will not recognize us, they need to go through that type of gradual process. Right? Yeah, please.
A probe into the disciples' understanding of noumenon and phenomenon to reveal the rise of illusions. The Buddha asked, when you speak of Bodhi and enlightenment, do you mean that because of its enlightened nature you call it Bodhi? Or because of its basic unenlightened nature you now call it enlightened Bodhi? The
Mm.
real missed by cognizance of the false. Purna Maitrayani Putra said, if that which is unenlightened is called Bodhi, it is not aware of anything.
Oh, that's okay. You can finish this one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so well, one thing off the bat is I'm not clear of the definition of nomenon. I understand phenomenon, but I don't know what nomenon is.
Hmm.
That's one like I'd like to look up to understand, unless you know the definition of it.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So just type on
A
Google search
thing,
the difference.
yeah, a thing as it is in itself, as distinct from a thing as it is knowable by the senses through phenomenal attributes. A thing as it is in itself, as distinct from a thing as it is knowable by the senses through phenomenal attributes.
It's confusion, huh?
Well, it's like the idea, it sounds like, okay, so I can see a tree, I can know a tree through my senses,
Mm-hmm.
but what a tree actually is in itself is the concept, like not relative to my senses, but relative to like what it is in reality. The implication being that my senses are not going to be able to like fully encompass that.
Hmm. Let's see here. Yeah. Hmm. Knowledge passes object at an object that exists independently of human sense. Oh, right here, this one. The appearance which constitute our experience. The main is the presumed things themselves, which constitute reality. Hmm. Hmm. So phenomena does mean depend upon our sense, right? Depend upon our sense to see. For example, when we consume the ice cream, right? Right. We feel we recognize. Okay, this is the chocolate. This is the vanilla, right? That's phenomena. Is all right because to our own experience, right?
Yeah.
But the is the presumed things themselves, which constitute reality. Uh, um,
So
uh,
it's like the reality that the senses are sensing. So the
that's
senses
by itself,
sense.
right? So one is we
Yeah.
have experience with the sense. Another one is just independently from our sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say when we look at strawberry ice cream, right? So at that moment, at that times, that moment is called the phenomena, right? Because ice cream, the strawberry by itself, it's already there, right?
Well, I don't know if we're looking at it, we're still experiencing it through our senses, aren't we? If I would think the phenomenon is like the strawberry ice cream is downstairs on the kitchen table. It still exists, even
Yeah.
though I can't see it
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or
So it
hear
stand
it.
by
Yeah.
itself. It stand by itself independently from our sense.
I think, yeah, that's the idea of the phenomenon.
Yeah. But when we talk about phenomena, this means when we taste that ice cream, we feel the coldness, we feel the sweetness. That called the phenomena, right? It constitute our own experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's two things are different. Okay, go back here. So go back here. So that's mean one thing is this one is independently from is independent independent from our sense. This is dependent on our sense. We we have experience through our sense, right?
Hmm.
All right. So okay. So what the Buddha
Yeah,
want?
yeah. So this is an interesting question. So when you speak of Bodhi and enlightenment, do you mean that because of its enlightened? So is Buddha's asking, is the nature of Bodhi enlightened? It's an enlightened nature, and that's why it's called Bodhi, or do we call it enlightened Bodhi because the nature of Bodhi is unenlightened? So yeah, I'd have to kind of go back and look at the previous section to fully like recall how he used
Hmm.
Purnamaitrayani used the term enlightened Bodhi. Um, but then his Purnamaitrayani response is that if that which is unenlightened is called Bodhi, it is not aware of anything. And I don't understand that. If
This
you
one, yeah, if it's not unenlightened,
which is
that's
unenlightened,
mean we cannot be aware of anything.
if it's unenlightened,
Yeah,
but
because yeah,
like I thought when you talk about enlightenment, like so right now, I can be aware of things, but I'm not enlightened. But I can be aware of whatever my senses.
mm-hmm.
So why if it's unenlightened, would it not be aware?
Of anything. Because if forget what is meant by body, forget that. Forget this one. If
My
that
my daughter hooked a bow on my T-shirt. Sorry, I
oh
just
yeah,
noticed that. Sorry.
yeah, if that which is unenlightened, that means is not aware of anything. Whether we call body or whether we call the tree, it doesn't matter. When this is unenlightened, that means we cannot aware of anything. Right?
Okay.
So go back here. So the Buddha provide or give two opposites paradox, right? One is when you speak body and enlightenment, do you mean that because of enlightened nature we call body? Yeah, definitely, right? Because of enlightened nature we call body by definition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or because of its basic unenlightened nature, you call it enlightened. So basically, the second sentence is not, it doesn't make sense.
Gotcha. Yes, because Bodhi's nature is enlightened. So how you couldn't have Bodhi be unenlightened.
You cannot have both, either one. Right? So it basic unenlightened nature. So let's put this way. Let's go back to here. So the Buddha say, oh, everyone has Buddha nature, right? The enlightened one, the awakening nature within ourselves. So we cannot have this sense that the basic unenlightened nature within ourselves. So this the second sentence is out this out the rim, right? So because the basic one is that we have Buddha nature because we have that kind of enlightened nature. So if we talk about let's say uh if we're unaligned, if our basic nature is unaligned, so how could we get to the enlightenment then? Let's put this way. Uh, if you have the rice, right? You cook and you can consume, right? That's because the rice, the purpose of rice, I mean that the rice has nutrition. Rice is eatable, right? So we start with that type of assumption. But let's say if we talk about cooking a piece of wood, or let's say a piece of rock, for example. So no matter what we try to cook or how long we cook, rock is just rock. There's no way for us to consume it. That's why The rock basically is just rock or dirt. We cannot consume anything from the rock. But because the rice is the source is eatable, so whether we boil it, whether we fry it, and so forth, we still consume it because the basic of this is eatable. Is that right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's why this first one mentioned, but not the second one, right? Hmm. So let's say if our minds have the enlightened nature, there's no way for us to be enlightened, right? It's like if it's a rock, there's no way for us to cook the rock for us to consume. Rock is rock. But because we have the pure mind here, right? The Buddhi mind, the pure nature. So that's why we cultivate, right? We do meditation so that we go back to that pure nature. It's like the rice. We cook in the way, no matter what we cook, we can consume it because it's eatable. Make sense now, right?
Hmm.
Okay, let's just move on then. Three final condition of enlightenment: basic ignorance, subject or object. The Buddha say, you say that that which is not aware of anything is not enlightened Buddhi, but that which traces an illusory object is enlightened, and that which abstains from so doing is free from subject awareness. The enlightened is certainly not the clean nature of Buddhi or self-nature. Buddhi is essentially enlightened, but is mistaken for enlightened awareness. Buddhi is not that awareness of things, for should awareness set up object, and set up of illusory object implies an illusory object. Wow, it's still confusion, right?
Well, this one feels very, very familiar and understandable to me.
All right, go ahead. You can, what do you
Yeah.
understand it is?
Basically, mind is mind because of things, and when we're talking about small mind, and things are things because of mind. It's like, so if we're talking about, being aware of something as an aspect of Bodhi, it's easy to see that that is an illusion, because if there's in the experience of, I am aware, well, then there's there of things, then there's, it implies a self. So if something is made into an object distinctly, there can't not be a subject. The subject then becomes a thing. So if we're, because in that objectifying an experience, so this is, I'm aware of this thing, then we've created artificial distinctions that set up self and other, that set up things in mind, and that's a duality that would, it's a sort of obscuration, not a state of enlightenment. But the abstaining from um, subjective awareness, so the abstaining from making that distinction about like the mind moving to classify things, to try to like figure things out and explain them, it's abstaining from that, we remain in like the undifferentiated mind, the great mind, the the nature, and so there's no hindrance there. But if we don't abstain from that, if we do invest, you know objects with a sense of thingness, and we set the mind into motion, well, then we're caught in that story of subject and of object and subject. And that's kind of the basis of all of our craving. It's like the core of our ignorance and our craving and dislike.
So as soon as we define, as long as we have the intention to define this subject, this object, that's what the unenlightened mind is about, right? Only when we recognize that There's no distinction between object and subject, right? Could be aware of that. That's just more than we have, more than enough for us to have that type of pure nature, right? So it say that I think we talk about this type of story is, yeah, story for me is much easier to understand. So one guy, right? He used a mirror to see his face, right? And when he walk away from the mirror, he say he lost his head. So he hold his head and run around and say, I lost my head. Right. So in Buddhist way, it say that, well, we have the pure nature already, but we're looking for another pure nature. We're looking for another Buddhi. That's where we create the problems. That's where we have what they call illusory object and subject too. So just be aware. Let's put this way in the practical sense. So when we just, let's say, follow the breath, right? When we inhale, exhale, we just recognize that's all. But if we move beyond that, that's okay. We say, oh, I'm inhaling now and exhaling now. And at that moment, if somehow the breath could not flow smoothly, will be agitated. That's the problem there. So we just recognize with that kind of what we call bare awareness, a pure awareness. That's more than enough. Is that right? In this sense?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This one here. He Buddha step by step. His man. Yeah. Please. Yeah.
Okay. The six coarser conditions of unenlightenment. Thus, from that which was beyond both identity and diversity arose all differences. When the differentiating subject confronted its differentiated objects, the resultant diversity led to identification. Identity and diversity further led to that which was neither the same nor different. These conflicting disturbances resulted in troubled perception, which in time gave rise to objective form. Self-created confusion caused by clinging to names caused karmic activity and so suffering. Thus, that which manifested became the changing world, and that which was still was space. Hence, space stands for identity, and the world for diversity. And that which is neither the same nor different is a living being.
You got that?
Wow.
You got that?
Yeah, generally. So it's very much like a kind of, it's like an origin story of like how we are, where we find ourselves. So when you're saying that first sentence up there was saying like the base, can you scroll back up to that one? So from that which is beyond identity and diversity, that being the Buddha nature, that being Bodhi, that's where all differences arose from. And it's, there's always can be another question, because to be like, oh, well, what caused the difference to arise? Beyond just Bodhi, like, oh, if it's Bodhi's undifferentiated, what was, but regardless of that, so when the differentiating subject and object confronted each other, that led to identification.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that like subject and object are just, they're phenomena that are part of the same process. They only appear to be separate, but they're actually kind of like they're like two poles that are just like two sides of a coin. To be a little cliche. Identity and diversity further led to was that which was neither the same nor different. And then at the end, that which is neither the same nor different is the living being. So Yeah, these conflicting disturbances resulted in troubled perception, which in time gave rise to objective form. Yeah, objective form being that, that's okay, there's subjective, there's a self, and then there's things. And so these things we can be objective about, we can measure them.
Mm.
Um, and self-created confusion caused by and clinging to names. Yeah, like because so if all phenomena, if we fast forwarded time, like any matter would probably start to look like liquid
Mm.
because it would be flowing, it would be changing so quickly that we would see that, yeah, really what is there to a table beyond the name and the idea that goes along with it, that there's nothing really that's going to keep this as a table forever.
Mm.
um so that any sort of object really comes down to its reality is in the word and the concept associated with that word.
Mm.
In like say on the nominal level, the nomenon, to try to use a word I just understood, it's not a table. Nomenon wise, it's it's there's no thing relative to human thought about it.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so that last part's interesting. That which manifested became the changing world, and that which was still was space.
Mm.
Okay. And so space stands for identity, and the world for diversity. And that which is neither the same nor different is a living being. The same nor different than what?
So
The
little
same.
the living beings are the same idea that's come from the space and the word here. So they neither the
Okay.
same nor different.
For each of them, for both space and diversity.
So this is important one. Space stand for identity. Can you imagine that? How could space stand for identity and the word, the solid, the form for diversity? What do you think?
Yeah, space stands for identity. I definitely like I definitely spaciousness is a experience I have associated with the sense of identity, where you're on a if I'm on a mountain, I can look out and feel, and it's like I feel spacious.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'm stuck in a room, like I feel limited. So space does definitely interact with identity in some way.
Mm. So he said that whichever is manifest become changing world. That's and which word still was space. Space was still and relate to identity. The words relate to the changing for diversity. Of course, diversity means the changing. Let's say from liquid to gas, from gas to solid, and so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so do living beings, they do the same. I mean that they follow the same pattern too. Or same the pattern with having the space and the solid form or this the form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's pretty deep, right? It's pretty profound meaning, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here. So that's where he defined, that's where space and the word come from, where the living beings come from. Right. The law of continuity, is that okay, right?
Yeah.
Continuity of the physical universe, subsequent confrontation of subjective awareness with objective dim voidness, produce vibration and movement. Hence, the wheel of wind in constant movement in the universe. Awareness, so shaken by the voice, will be numbered by it and hardened into elements of metal. Hence, the will of metal is to preserve the earth. When the movement caused by awareness produce the wind and harden into metals. The friction between the wind and metal flash fire, the nature of which were transformative. Fire sprang up and melt metals, and the wheel of water pervades all the world's intent direction. The meeting of rising fire with falling water from the wet ocean and dry continents. Wow, this is why fire sometimes rises from the bottom of the sea, and the stream of rivers flow over continents. Excess of water over fire results in the formation of high mountain. Hence, rock sparks when struck and melts when submerged to the red enough heat. And excess of earth over the water result in the growth vegetation. Hence, the forest fire reduce the tree to ash, and the plants please when twist. Thus, these illusory four wheels intermingles and became mutual seat to ensure the continuity of the world. You follow that?
Yeah.
It's very uh, wow. Um, mm, it's understandable for the logic, right? So somehow substance confrontation of subject and awareness with object,
Mm-hmm.
awareness produce a vibration because we define this subject. Okay, we will define, okay, subject is ourselves. The object, let's say the ice cream, right? And because of confrontation, because of conflict or friction between I and the object there, right? So what I say, the vibration movement. Make sense? What do you think? As one
Yeah. I mean,
define.
it's I mean, it's an understandable explanation, and there can kind of get a sense of an idea of it. But this is obvious at this level of it seems to be very primordial.
Mm,
Like this would be the subjective awareness wouldn't be like a normal human subjective awareness. This would be like cosmic level subjective awareness. And
yeah.
so that makes sense that it could really, because it's probably huge. It's like the universe, and the energy behind that awareness would do something totally different than like my subjective awareness.
Hmm. It seems to me it's like this we discussed before. They create the nuclear energy, right? By breaking down, the nuclear, the elements, right? Chemical element, right? Right.
Mm-hmm.
When they break down that kind of chemical elements, they create energy. Is it similar ideas? What do you think? Or the
Hmm.
fusion? Which one do you think? The fusion is to bring them together, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about the like this relative to what our most up-to-date science says. And some of it seems to match up. The fusion component, though, would seem to be more like the metal melting because of the wind. Because in stars, fusions happens in stars with the molecules are getting slammed into each other and they become bigger and bigger, and ultimately it creates metal eventually
Mm-hmm.
as it keeps going. And then the next part where the water rising up and the water flowing down, well, at when well the other part is the wheel of metal to preserve the earth. So
Mm-hmm.
inside the earth's core there's thought to be molten metal that's spinning, and that's what's producing the magnetic field that protects us from the sun's harmful radiation.
Mm-hmm.
So that lines up. And then like when stars die after they form higher level elements, once they hit iron, they start to become so dense, they'll like, and they don't have enough outward force from fusion happening, so they collapse in, and then they'll supernova and explode. And when
Mhm.
they explode, they create water.
Mhm.
So like, to me, I mean, maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into it, but it's like the fire rising up, the meaning of rising fire with falling water. Well, I mean, the water's not going to fall onto that star. It's going to get shot out, and then it's gonna fall onto other things with gravity, in other locations.
Mm. But
So
again, it starts with the awareness of subject and object. It starts with the differentiation. It starts with the discrimination between the subject and object. That's why everything come along afterward, right? As much as we have that type of discrimination between the object and subject, so that there is some kind of friction, some kind of wind there, the wheel of wind. That's what the Buddha say here, right? And so
yeah,
categories, and some it is moving and become hardened into element of my metal. So the wind move, right? It make things to be hardened, right? So the wheel of metal to preserve the earth, to protect the earth, like you say, right?
yeah. Well, I
Mm.
think like your example, bringing it down to like experienceable stuff like the ice cream, um, and the sort of like the friction between subject and object, like there's a little bit of a stress there always with subject and object, because um, then self begins to feel like it can, it can be kind of like an object, like it can be added to or taken away from.
Mhm.
And so there is this sort of like mental activity around that. And someone like really intense mental activity, like a lot of motion in their thinking in their mind, they do tend to become kind of hard. They do tend to become kind of dense, as opposed to being fluid when they are relaxed.
Mm.
So maybe that, yeah, maybe that kind of lines up with the
Mm.
this part.
So, and that's when the friction between the wind and metal create the fire. Wind and metal, right? The wind blow to the metal, it create the fire.
Hmm.
And when the fire spread up and melt the metal, it become fire burn the metal, right? It become water, like the liquid, right? The liquid, the building up rise fire and falling water from the wet ocean. So that's what we have the wetness and dry, wet ocean and dry continent. So sometimes fry rise from the bottom of the sea and stream and river flow over continents. So sometimes fire rise from the bottom of the sea. Plasma, what do you think? Is that right? That's what is similar to.
Magma is when it's in still under the Earth's surface. Lava is when it comes out.
Mhm. I mean that under the ocean and the fire come up under the ocean.
Probably, yeah, lava.
Lava, okay.
Yeah, yeah. They're
It,
underwater volcanoes.
so excess of water over fire. So more water than fire drain in high mountain. What do you think about this? Fire. Excess water
Hmm.
over fire.
I thought it meant like you had a fire and you had more water on top of it. Like I was thinking on over fire, like on top. But in this case, it's just like, are you reading it as like a mix, excess of water, just not necessarily above or below or beside, but just more water than fire?
Mm-hmm. More water than the fire, degrade some kind of metals. So that's why it have a rock spark when struck and melt when submit to the red enough heat.
Hmm. I'm not sure how I could connect that one, because high mountains, my understanding, high mountains are formed by tectonic plates and their collision.
Mm.
But tectonic plates movement is going to be affected by water. So
Mm.
the more water that's on the plates, the more force they're subjected to, the more they're pushed down. So
Mhm.
that could affect their movement somehow, that leads to mountain creation. I know I was listening to a program recently about like the consequence of the melting glaciers adding more volume to the oceans will affect the tectonic plates in some way, but I can't remember how. So
Okay. Mm. So as an excess of birth or the water result in growth vegetation. This is understandable, right? So have more earth than water. So we have the plant then, right?
mhm.
So the forest, hence a forest fire reduce the tree into ash. It's understandable, right? So
Mhm.
when the forest was born, right? So tree come back to earth to become earth. And a plant this when twist. So when the trees was burned down to ash and it's become uh what do you call um nutrition, what do you call that one? Not nutrition. Um mm, uh, yeah, the ash become nutrition for the tree. What do you call that one? Well, I forgot.
Fertilizer.
No. When you ask menu or anything to plant the tree, what do you call what? That's one I forgot the term. So now the tree was burned down to become the ash. Now the ash become a source of nutrition for another trees, different
Oh,
plant.
I would say fertilizer.
Yeah, fertilize. That's all I forgot.
Okay. Okay.
That's it's fertilize, not other plants. So that's the whole circle of life there, and they are illusory, intermingle and become a motor seed to ensure the continuity of the world. So go back to this the whole sense. What do you think? Is it very complicated to understand or is logical to understand?
Well, I think given our more advanced understanding of some of the elements, like scientific understanding, I think it's maybe it's a little different than I think if I'd heard it at the time when I had the same sort of understanding as they do at that time. Because even if the Buddha did know about more advanced scientific understanding, it'd be no point in talking to people about it because they would only get kind of what they already understood.
Mm-hmm.
So it's some of it doesn't, match up with like my understanding of like earth formations, but not in ways that are obviously contradictory, just in ways that I'm like not sure of how like this how water
Yeah,
excess of water over fire results in high mountains.
yeah, sorry. Give me 1 second. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so anyway, mm, it's very tough for common people to understand this type of phenomena is come from the mind, right? Come from the distinction, the discrimination between the subject and object. That's the root of the cause to create everything, right? Whether it's water, earth, and so forth. So let's go back to the practical understanding. Let's say in our daily life, as once we define this is mine, this is your subject and object. That's really the problem, right? All kind of conflict, all kind of problem, all kind of friction come from right there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. As soon as there's that notion, yeah, even before mine and yours, even, I mean, just object and subject, because then the mine and yours is going to come out of that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a
Well,
sense, like mine and yours can be a like solve problems in a sense. Like if there's someone in a society too, like if there's someone who's really greedy who steals stuff from people, well, hey, this is mine, that's yours. Like you can't have mine.
mm-hmm.
But that's only after the whole subject object thing has arisen that becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's kind of interesting that, yeah, it's at the core of it, but once everything is in motion, it also it becomes a sort of protective concept with, like, to keep that the story which we live in kind of fair
Mm-hmm.
and
That's true.
balanced.
But that's why the Buddha say that's just an illusory subject and object. It's not the real one. Let's put it this way and want to bring to the practical sense. Let's say yeah, I'm a teacher and professor, so I work into the class, and even when I grade my student paper, and if I define, oh, hey, I have more power than my student, that if they don't follow my instruction, I give I would give them a bad grade, right? But if I have another attitude, okay, I understand how they make mistake. That's mean what do you call put ourselves on the shoe of other, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no distinction between subject and object. That time we can solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense now, right? It's
Yeah.
difficult, right?
Yeah.
As we define, oh, here I'm doctor, here I'm professor, and they are student, they are patient. That's the problem there. That's the conflict there, because we will have more authority than them, and vice versa, right? So, but if we immerse in that kind of situation, and we put ourselves on the shoe of other people, we can help ourselves and others to solve any problems, whether it's in the relationship between the spouse or the husband, the wife, or parent, children. That means when we put down or we put aside the subject and object, I and others, we can solve the conflict there. I try to bring back to the practical sense instead of this kind of profound principle. Makes
Mm-hmm.
sense, right? This is
Yes.
makes sense in
Yes.
Buddhist
Yes.
tradition. And other people they define, okay, if you don't follow me, you're my enemy. If you harm me, you are my enemies. If you help me, you are my friends. So if we define in that black and white, there's no way for us to find the real enemy or the real friends. Because friends and foe, friends and enemy can be changeable. One moment they can be enemies, another moment they can be friends, depending upon how we interact with each other and how they interact with us.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, let's say, if we understand why they create the problem for us, why they are troublemaker, and so forth. If we have the kind of understanding, it's much easier for us to understand them and to feel sympathy for them, or empathy for them. Otherwise, if we put ourselves in the black and white, okay, if you harm me, you're my enemy. But sometimes, let's put this way, the doctor may harm the patient in the positive way, in the healthy way. All right, no one want to take medicine, but you prescribe. You say that, oh, if you want to get better, you need to take medicine. In my case, I don't want to have that kind of test. I want to have the guys. a spinal, nah, but they still have to do that. So, so my point is that as long as we have the tension between ourselves and others, subject and object, that's where the problem comes from. But as long as we intermingle or we immerse ourselves with others, with all kinds of phenomena. For example, that's what is the it talk about the concentration. When we really concentrate our mind on those things, if we have a thought of, oh, I'm concentrating now, that is the illusory thought. That's what we talk about, the pure awareness. It makes sense now, right?
Yes, yes, Dave.
All right, so thank you. Let's just stop here today then. Well, it's